Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner, and the Vuelta a España starts tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, so up in Europe, we're talking about the Netherlands. This is going to be stage one. The team time trial event will begin for the Vuelta a España for 2022. Now today, when I woke up sitting on the couch, flip open the Cycling News, the website, and we see Nairo Quintana, who got disqualified from the Tour de France results here in 2022, where he was 6th on the general classification, tested positive for tramadol, will not start the Vuelta a España. He's decided to fight the tramadol ban possibly, or maybe he's fighting whether or not if it was in his system. I'm not certain. But he has 10 days to fight it in the court, in the sports court CAS, and he's going to decide that he can't do Vuelta a España and fight at the same time. But I'm curious, while sitting up here on the podium of Beyond the Coverage, what exactly is Nairo Quintana going to fight? Is he fighting the ban? Is he fighting whether or not if he's positive, or is he going to fight whether or not the UCI can even hold tramadol up on their testing when it's not on the WADA list? So stay tuned when I find out some news. What's happening with Nairo Quintana, I'll bring that to you guys here on Beyond the Coverage or the Butterfly Effect, whichever day it happens to drop. Now let's get into the racing because, like I said, tomorrow's the big stage one team time trial. Sorry, I always want to call it the individual time trial, but we all know it's the team time trial. 23 kilometers long, and my two favorites, Primoz Roglic from Jumbo-Visma and Remco Evenepoel from Quickstep, are going to have the first big battle for the general classification on tomorrow's stage one. Now, we know there's a bunch of other big favorites, but why do I have Remco Evenepoel and Primoz Roglic as my two big favorites here at the Vuelta a España? Well, Remco Evenepoel is a little bit more complicated because last year he did the Giro for the first time, his first big Grand Tour. Remember, he's only 22 years of age this year, last year being 21 when he's doing the Giro d'Italia. But when he went into that Giro, remember, he's coming off of a big break where he had the crash at Tour of Lombardy the season before, and that was his first opening race in 2021. Now, at that Giro, he went stages 1 through 10, basically second on the general classification, and then from 10 to 15, 7th on the general classification, blew up somewhere around 17, and then dropped out of the race and didn't start stage 18 and went home. Now, I see in the comments a lot of people automatically saying, we all know Remco Evenepoel's not a GC favorite, so why are you naming him that way, Chris Horner? Well, when you're looking at the young kid, you got to give him some time to grow. Remember, Primoz Roglic, who's won the Vuelta here already 3 times consecutive. When he did his first Grand Tours, he didn't win right straight out of the box either, and he was much older than 22 years of age. And last year, Remco Evenepoel was only 21. So, that's why I'm putting him high up on the general classification here, and it's one of my big favorites, along with the fact when you look at all the favorites here at the Vuelta a España. I want you guys to focus on Remco Evenepoel and Primoz Roglic because these are the only two guys that can drop the whole field, have shown in years past to drop and demolish the whole fields from long-range distance and just ride everybody off their wheel. Now, when we're talking about all the other favorites here in the race, you're talking about Richard Carapaz. He won the Giro d'Italia. I know there's some games being played that year, though, between Primoz Roglic and Vincenzo Nibali when Richard Carapaz won that year of 2019 Giro d'Italia. But, so when we look here, and we're talking about here at this Vuelta, can he win? Absolutely. He can win. Simon Yates has shown he can win because he won in 2018 the Tour of Spain. But even then, did we see a remarkable just demolishing of the field as we've seen from a Remco Evenepoel or a Primoz Roglic? Those are the only two riders here that have demolished the field at certain points in times throughout their career, and they've done it often, right? It's not a one-time hitch. It wasn't like something that just fell off the bandwagon and all of a sudden there was something new. These two riders do big damage at times when they're ready to accelerate from the professional peloton over in Europe. Remember, Remco Evenepoel won Liège-Bastogne-Liège solo from 30 kilometers out, all from the last climb, La Redonde, not the last climb, but the last big famous climb there at LBL. He ran all the way up from the summit of that climb all the way to the finish of LBL to win solo with the whole field chasing him. And let me remind you guys too, when we're talking about April and the Spring Classics, when we're talking April and July, that's the only time when the professional peloton is 100% on form. So when a rider wins in the classics, talking about Paris-Roubaix or even the Spring Classics and the hillier ones at the Ardennes, then those are the type of riders when you can win like that, when you come into a Grand Tour and you've been climbing the way Remco Evenepoel has, and we saw him at Classic of San Sebastian, he better be on your list. Now, I'm very aware that this year in 2022, Remco Evenepoel's lost 3 stage races throughout this year. He lost Valencia to Vlasov when he went up the climb about 4 stages into it, and he couldn't hold the wheel and lost that race to Vlasov, finished second on the general classification. Remember the Basque Country? That's right, the Basque Country. Remco Evenepoel was holding the race leader's jersey on the last stage, and then it was Danny Martinez that dislodged the Belgian rider and went on to take the win at the Basque Country, leaving Remco Evenepoel for taking scraps back there on the general classification points. Now, when we start looking at the next stage race, it's Trino Adriatico. These were all early in the season for Remco Evenepoel because Trino Adriatico, he got dropped by Tadej Pogacar and couldn't hold the wheel and lost more places on the general classification. And it was another steep climb. So a lot of time when I'm looking at the comments, you guys are always telling me he can't climb the steep stuff, Chris. That is true. In the past, he couldn't. But now I believe we're seeing a different Remco Evenepoel, like I told you a couple days ago when I listed him as my high favorites here at the Vuelta a España. And we're going to see shortly in Spain because there's some big steep climbs coming. And the climbs start in the first week here at the Vuelta a España. Now, I expect big results from Remco Evenepoel, but he's 22 years of age. And he doesn't have the strongest team right now. We're talking about Quickstep. We all know Quickstep is a great classic team. They're great at winning stages in the Grand Tours, but they're not necessarily great at winning the general classification when it comes to Grand Tours. It's not like you look at the history, the decades of racing from Quickstep teams that you've seen them winning Grand Tours. So Remco Evenepoel has a lot to focus on. But first is the team time trial tomorrow. I woke up and when I saw in the Cycling News article, he's going to have Julian Alaphilippe following on the wheel of Remco Evenepoel. I would not like to be the third rider when you're following Remco Evenepoel, Julian Alaphilippe, who's not much bigger and probably not much wider than Remco Evenepoel. So it's going to be 2 aerodynamic, fast guys on their TT bike, and then whoever's going to be the third rider. I'm just interested to know if that third rider that starts that position at the beginning of tomorrow's race on stage 1 of the Vuelta a España, if he'll be able to finish with his team when it's all said and done after 23 kilometers of racing. Going to be a tall order, whoever's sitting behind Julian Alaphilippe, maybe even a tall order for Julian Alaphilippe to stay on the wheel of Remco Evenepoel. So when it comes to advice going into the team time trial, I'll tell Remco Evenepoel right now, if I'm his director, every time you do an acceleration, Remco, keep it smooth and steady. Get the pace up really smooth. When I was teammates with Fabian Cancellara, he was a master at this, of looking after his teammates during the team time trial. Every time he had a big time effort on the front, it was always slow to begin with the acceleration, and then he'd bring it up to maximum speed and hold it. It's always the acceleration you want to watch for when you're watching the team time trial tomorrow. Now, Primoz Roglic, Jumbo-Visma, they got team time trial experts right because Primoz Roglic is a time trial machine and Rowan Dennis is one too. So they should be the big favorites, Jumbo-Visma, to win the time trial tomorrow. But I'm looking forward to seeing if Quickstep with Remco Evenepoel, Remy Cavagna, Julian Alaphilippe, if his form has come up 100% here in time for the Vuelta a España, if Quickstep, who have been known for winning team time trials, if they can dislodge the Jumbo-Visma squad on tomorrow's race. And then, if they come into the next races with the race leader's red jersey here at the Vuelta a España, what kind of tactics will Quickstep employ to keep Remco Evenepoel safe and protected throughout these first 3 stages up in the Netherlands? And then when we start getting into the mountain stages in Spain, can they, as a team, Quickstep, defend a race leader's red jersey here at the Vuelta a España? I don't know. When you look at the list, they got some quality riders there, but they don't have big-time climbers when you start comparing it to Jumbo-Visma, who have Sepp Kuss backing up Primoz Roglic. So Julian Alaphilippe has to be the Sepp Kuss for Remco Evenepoel if he's going to win the general classification here at the Vuelta a España. Now, one last thing before I go on the Tramadol debate. I'd seen in the comments that one of the viewers had read an article where over a 20-minute effort, Tramadol had given an athlete a 5% advantage. Now, that's just not possible when you do the math. Many days throughout my career, I raced without Tramadol. It's not like you can back up days after days of racing with Tramadol. Certainly, as I told you on Beyond the Coverage, yesterday's coverage, that I have used Tramadol throughout my career at points and times. But it was always crucial points and times when it was important moments in the race, you'd have it with you or your back is starting to tighten up, and that's when I'd take the Tramadol. Now, that means that 90% of my days of racing, at least, if not 95, I'm doing those races without any tramadol. And so if you had a 5% advantage, the math just isn't there, guys. It can't be that big of an advantage because on those days when I wasn't taking the tramadol, if there was a 5% advantage in the whole of the peloton, and we're talking about getting to the last climb and going up that big monster climb, whatever race it may or may not have been, if you're going up that last climb, there's no way that I could have finished with the front group. So when we're talking about the Vuelta a España in 2013 when I won, I'll take a guess that probably 4 days or 5 of those stages I probably would have had tramadol going up the last mountain stages, but there was 13 summits that year in 2013, so there was a lot of stages done without tramadol. If there was a 5% advantage, there's no way I still would have been at the front of that group. So be careful every time you're reading a study, an athletic study on performance enhancing stuff, or just on diet and stuff like that. There's so much stuff made up and it's so far-fetched that you just can't take what you're reading as factual. And a 5% advantage is just massive when you're talking about something as simple as tramadol. So it just isn't there. The math doesn't add up. There's no way it can be. But the big topic right now has to be the ketones, right? We see riders like Primoz Roglic and Jumbo-Visma, Team Ineos, those teams are all using the ketones. So I got myself a supply of ketones and I'm going to try them out. Let me know in the comments of whether or not if you guys are interested on finding out how I feel after taking them. I got a month's dose that I'll start taking probably sometime here in the next week or two throughout the Vuelta. I'm waiting for a little bit more calm period here at the house. And then I'll start taking their small, healthy dose of ketones is what they call it. It's the cheaper version. I'll do a month of that. And then I want to go to their full-on performance ketones and see how that works. Now, it's about $3,000 for a professional athlete to run ketones if they're doing the math the way that I see it written up. If you're taking it in the morning, you're taking it before your training starts, you're taking it near the end of your hard effort and training it, and then you're taking it right after your training. It's quite expensive, about $120, maybe even $150, depending on how hard your training day was, will decide on how much of the dosage you'll take throughout each training day when you're on ketones. Now that'll probably start about a month and a half from now, but I'll start the first easier dose. They have the healthier dose that they recommend taking to begin with, and I'll start that in the first week or two here, sometime after things start to calm down and run a little bit smoother at home, so I have less obstacles that are interrupting my master's training here in Bend, Oregon. Let me know if you guys are interested in the results, and if that's so, then I'll post up and how I'm feeling with the ketones and let you guys know if $3,000 a month is worth it to your guys' pocketbook to get a little bit faster, or how much faster I think you'd actually get by taking the supplement, the ketones. And if you guys are interested in whether or not if a $3,000 a month bill is worth it and what kind of gains you may or may not feel through your cycling and through your training in general. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition. Beyond the Coverage and the Butterfly Effect starts tomorrow on Stage 1 Fridays, individual team time trial at the Vuelta a España. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you then.